Hi, my name is Ean Golden, and I'm here for my BPM workshop here in beautiful Tel Aviv. Hey, everybody. Hi. Nice to see you all, and very happy to be here. You have a beautiful city, and it's a really, really nice place to hang out together, right? And talk and learn about DJ stuff. So first of all, I want to say I don't have the way or the definitive answer for how to DJ. What I have are 20 years of experience of being a professional DJ, making a career out of playing music my whole life. And so I have what works for me, and I have some things that I'd like to share with you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true or that they work for you or that they're your truth. You only know that. So take what you like, throw away what you don't. And if something doesn't make sense, challenge it or ask me. I'd very much like this to be a two-way dialogue. If I talk to you the whole night, we'll both not get very much out of this. So I think we have a microphone. If you're confused, because I know for most of you, English is a second language, but everyone speaks very well. So if you're confused, you need clarity, raise your hand. And if you just have a comment or a question, and I'm also going to ask you a lot of questions, don't be shy, use the microphone. So I'm also going to treat this workshop kind of like a DJ set, or what my philosophy, again, of a DJ set is. I have some ideas here of things that I'd like to share with you that I think will be beneficial. But if I just come in with my agenda and don't really listen to what you want to do, then we really miss a big opportunity. So what is DJing? Like, why do we do this thing called DJing? Somebody might say, because somebody pays me some money to play some music, or I want to become a producer, so I started with DJing, or, all kinds of reasons. Here's my very philosophical idea of DJing. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you can take something from it. Who here has heard of quantum mechanics or the theory of relativity? So I think there's a connection. In quantum mechanics, it's said that something really doesn't exist until it comes into relation to something else. So let's say, like you, sir, what's your name? Hudi. Could you stand up for a second? So Hudi comes up here, and he exists because we all see him, right? You very much exist. But if none of us were here, and then you, sir, what's your name? Sorry? Eshin. Now you stand up. Now, if only the two of them were in the room, the relationship between the two would make each exist in a different and unique way. So think of them each like a piece of music. And you guys can sit down now so to make you uncomfortable. When we play a song, it's sort of dead. It's not alive anymore until we play it and it interacts with something else. And so these interactions can be with the crowd. That brings it to life, right? We play a song and the crowd interacts with it, and it happens, something new happens in that moment. That's life. But we as DJs get to do something really interesting. We can create life by constructing relationships between pieces of music. We can create life in music by context. So let's say that there's something really, really political happening. Like in my country, we had this big women's march that was very, very a big deal. Like, women really came out right after Trump was elected, and they really asserted their rights as women, which was a beautiful thing. And I played a set the next day, and in the middle of the set, I played a big classic rock song that was a big anthem of like rebellion. And it felt, in that context, that song came to life. So there was, the songs relationship to the moment, which brought life to it. Is this making sense? I'm getting some glazed looks. Okay, good. Where it gets really interesting is when we can put songs in relationship to each other. So you've got one song, and then you have another song that comes after it. And our brains remember the first song. And so there's a context, there's a relationship there that creates something new. And then if we start to blend things on top of each other, putting one song on top of it, or changing a song, now the music is really alive. And I think that's why after 20 years, I'm still excited about DJing, and I believe that everyone could also be excited about DJing, is because we bring music to life. Does anybody else get excited by that? Thank you. About a quarter of the room. What does everyone else get excited about? Let's get the mic out here. Because I don't want to, preach or talk about things that you're not interested. So I'd love to hear from a few people. What are you really excited about right now? What are you really curious about? And did you have a fantasy of what you might get out of today? If anything really springs to mind, raise your hand. What are you excited about? Did you have any fantasies about what I might talk about? Or what did you have for breakfast? Let's start there. All right, what did you have for breakfast and what's your name?
Cookies.
Cookies?
Yeah.
What kind of cookies?
Chocolate chip cookies. With milk, of course.
Logically, I would have been offended if not. And what are you curious about?
Curious? I'm curious about knowing how it is to be a professional DJ for 20 years and still be excited about it, like performing a lot and still being able to enjoy it right after, 20 years of doing it.
It's a great question. Does that resonate for anybody else? You could even just nod your head. I've seen heads nod. Okay, that's a great question. Thank you. Who else knows what they had for breakfast? In the back of the room, we have one more breakfast. You, sir.
Hi.
What's your name?
Omer.
Hi, Homo. I'm sorry, I'm going to crucify all these Israeli names. I'm just going to apologize in advance.
Okay. I had cereal.
What kind of cereal?
It's like a local cereal. You probably never heard of it.
Okay.
Like chocolate.
I'm sensing a theme. So what are you curious about? Either today or in general or?
In the workshop?
Yeah. Because, when we come to these things, we have these fantasies about, Ian's going to be really interesting and smart, or he'll be really dumb, and we'll get to watch him screw up, or I hope he teaches me how to do this, So
I know. Like every time I talk to a DJ, it seems like the only place for a DJ to express himself is on the dance floor. And I would love to know about the place of the DJ that doesn't really want to make people dance, just like appreciate quality music of whatever kind you can think of.
Yeah, so the only place where you can really practice your art and maybe be enjoyed, the context is normally on the dance floor. Yeah. So what are the other options? That's what you're asking.
Or maybe how to incorporate lots of different genres into one dance floor. That's also something I'm curious about.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a great. So since I've been here in Tel Aviv, everyone's telling me that hip hop and mixed music of different kinds is very popular. So if that's true, which it sure seems to be, then you play a lot of different tempos, and there's an opportunity to play a lot of different styles in that world, which is exciting. If you're playing techno, it's like 125 for 7 hours. It's sort of, not a lot of difficulty in moving. So who here would be interested in playing a mixture of different kinds of music? Great. Okay. So now we're doing it, right? I have a sense of you. I had a little bit of a thing prepared. It happens that the thing I had prepared was going to be pretty good for you. So it's like, okay, cool. My set that I wanted to play is going to work for the crowd. But it took a little while to feel it out. And that would be my first DJ tip, is to always really pay attention to your audience. Now, in this case, we get to talk to each other. You know, I guess you could get on the mic and say, turn down the music and say, hey, what does everyone think of what I'm playing right now? Yeah. How do you feel about my set? But it might be a little weird. So we have to look for cues and watch people. Imagine a scenario where you're playing multiple pieces of music and you have this idea that comes in your head where you're like, I really want to play this song. It'd be really cool. This would be really special right now. That happens a lot, right? And especially in mixed genre contexts, a lot of times these are random songs, like weird things that you don't necessarily, or sometimes are hard to mix out of. Does that make sense? You're playing different genres, you're playing different tempos, they can be difficult to work with. So what I'm going to show you today are a series of condensed little tricks and tips that will help you move between hard songs by being smart and using technology in creative ways. So let's say that, you know, I'm like this situation last night and I'm playing some house music, but I watch people's bodies and they're kind of doing this and they're not really into it. It's too fast of a tempo. And I go, oh, you know what would be really cool right now is a classic hip hop track, like something that everyone knows, kind of groovy, kind of cool. And then I go, oh, how about Tribe Called Quest? And so I drop Tribe Called Quest. Who knows this song? I got a lot more hands that time. All right, we're working it out. You know, I hate to tell you this, I really have bad news for you. During all my workshops, because I'm also, my big thing is dance and movement right now. So I also teach some dance classes and I make people get up and move their bodies. So I'm just gonna warn you in advance, you may have to stand up and move your arms. Because otherwise if we sit, our brains get dull and we stop integrating the information. So it may come. All right, so I'm playing Tribe Called Quest. The crowd loves it, but I need to have a plan. I can't just figure out what I'm gonna do out of this track on the fly. I could, but the results are gonna be very mixed. Much, much better to have a plan and to be set up for success so that when I play this track, everything after it is like solid gold. So the first thing I'll notice, we're gonna do a little auto ducking with the filter, is that you probably can't see this, but in this file, or actually right here, there's a little tag that I recognize. It's a hashtag. And this is a system that I use, which I'm gonna go into more detail in a bigger video later, that I've found to be incredibly invaluable. So I see there's a hashtag there and I say, oh, it says hashtag techno hop, which is my tricky way my brain works to say, oh, I'm gonna go from hip hop to techno, or techno to hip hop. So if I search for hashtag techno hop, watch what happens. I get 5 songs, all with that hashtag, and all with numbers that show me an order. And this idea is something that I call a vignette. This is how I prepare for sets. I will create little vignettes, or I'll design vignettes. A vignette is how would you describe a vignette? It's like a little story, you know, like somebody comes out and they do a little story, and then like a short film. Yeah. So instead of a whole movie, I prepare. Yeah, if you pre-wrote your whole set, it'd be like writing a movie. And if nobody liked the movie and you played it, it just would suck. So if you have a whole bunch of short movies, you can play one and you notice, oh, people liked that black and white thriller. I have some more like that, and you play some more short movies like that. That's the concept. These are short little movies that I've pre-designed. And here's one of them. So if I'm playing a track and I see a hashtag, I go, oh, this song is in a short movie. I've got some other songs that go well after it. Boom. And I never remember. I never remember, because it's too hard to remember all your music. But I see the hashtag in there and I go, I've got a out here. Yay. We've got a question. Yes.
What do you do when the crowd doesn't like the techno hop first song? You won't know how to get out of it if you use your system.
That's a good question. That's a good question. So the vignette's not going to work at all. I need to get out of it. Well, then I have to use my old school DJ skills. And that's a whole different topic of how to get out of songs quickly. That's a risk you take. But hopefully I picked well. And usually I know I pick these vignettes when I have a sense of this is where I need to go. Like, oh, we really need to slow down the tempo, or we need to have a peak moment here. Generally, my instincts are pretty good, and then this sets me up for success after that. But you're right. If it doesn't work, you got to get out. You were confused about something. Yeah, so the question was, where do I put the hashtags? And are they the genres or what? It's a great question. I put them in the comment field because that is a field that goes into iTunes and is seen by everything. And this system, one of the reasons I like teaching this is because it works in Serato, it works in Rekordbox. Any system you use, you can use this. Agnostic, except for records. Now, do I use genre? No. And this is why this system is so beautiful, because it's totally cross-genre. It has nothing to do with genre. It has to do with a relationship between pieces of music that I uniquely have in my head. It could be anything. He asked if it's the BPM. In this case, it's this idea of I'm going up to techno. I think this is how I designed this vignette. It's like I start slow and I move up to a faster tempo. But it could be Hey Ya, where it's like this vignette is all about this rhythm. It could be a lot of different things. This is where you get creative. Your brain's like, oh, this is the... sometimes I'll use artist names like Luciano. Like, oh, this is my Luciano moment. And I'll put his name and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm like, and I know what that sound is. But one might be in one genre, another's in another genre. And it pulls everything together. Very, very powerful. So we're playing Tribe Called Quest. And you'll notice that on the left track, which is the track I'm playing, there's a little red flag. That's a marker. And this is another topic that I'm going to get into in more detail another time. But it tells me that that's where I'm going to mix out of this song. So I don't have to remember, I can see it. It's an indicator. Again, you could do this on any software. I don't have to worry about getting it right. I know I'm going to get it right because that's where I want to mix. And there's another thing I see. I see there's a couple green flags. That's a loop. I know that there's a loop that I want to set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit activate loop. And when it gets to that place, it's just going to start looping. So I don't even need to worry about the loop. It's already been set. Because the loop I set was super special and unique and weird, and I would never get it every time perfectly. And I've done that so that it all works perfectly. So let's hear that mix again with some continuity.
Positives is a plus, love, as the tribe flies high like a dove.
So the loop's active. I don't have to worry about that. That's going to happen automatically. I just got to get my track ready and drop it. Oh, you know what? Guys, I didn't even do the mix right. And that's why it's not working. I'm not dropping the mix on the little flag. I'm going to do this again. We're going to hear how good this mix will be when I actually do it correctly. And the chorus is over here, so we'll talk about this. And then we've moved pretty seamlessly between a classic hip hop track and like a mid 90s, or I guess a mid 2000s, like, do you guys know that track, LCD Sound System? Fucking amazing band. We'll edit out that fuck. Oh my God, guys. If you can see them live, they retired. They're like, this is our last show ever 5 years ago. Then they came back. You really, really want to see them. It's just insane. So there's no way that I would think of and pull off that mix live. And I probably wouldn't even remember that these two songs that are so randomly different, they're in different genres, they're in different keys, they're in different tempos, would work so well together. And yet they do. And you'll see that, again, at the end of this song, I've set up another mix, which, notice I've already lost, because I was moving around doing a bunch of things, I've lost my sequence, and all I have to do to find my sequence is go back to hashtag. What was the hashtag? You see, you guys even remember it now. This is how powerful the system is. And there it is, Techno Hop 3. This is, and so I'm going from, this is ridiculous. This is how ADHD I am. We're going from Tribe Called Quest to LCD Sound System to Richie Houghton. So now we're rocking out, and it's getting a little more exciting. So obviously these two work super well together, because I tried like 40 different songs and I found two that were like, whoa, this is really, really cool. I might change the loop length, like just do that one. Maybe shorten it. Like switch between hearing the whole phrase, whatever, you get the idea. The creativity then for me comes in the mix, how I execute it, what I do, but I don't have to worry about the next song. Okay, so a lot of times we're spending all of our energy like worrying about, oh shit, what's the next song? And we're if you're using a laptop, you're doing this. And if I'm doing that, what am I not seeing? Not seeing the crowd. So I'm not arguing for pre-planning your sets. Quite the opposite. Pre-planning sets creates boring outcomes. But I am arguing for pre-planning moments so that you have a strategy for getting out of hard music, and you can spend a lot of time watching the crowd and executing mixes and then choosing your moments. Go ahead.
Hi. So one of my perspectives as a DJ is try to be as creative as possible on the dance floor. And considering I'm using sequences like you do, doesn't it make your set a little bit predictable? And, you know, if you're going to be a resident in some place and you're going to play music and you're going to use the sequence over and over to, you know, go from one genre to another. So how can you still keep the creativity on the dance floor and still using your sequences without being too predictable?
Sure. It's a great question. I think it's really important to remember and differentiate between who's bored. Is it the dance floor or is it the DJ? A lot of times we make a big mistake as DJs where we're like, oh, I need some new music. I need some new music. And you go and you find all new music and you try to play new tracks. And you're always trying to play new tracks. And you stop playing ones that maybe worked really, really well, but you've just heard too much. The dance floor is way less bored of stuff than we are. Like nobody remembers. I would love to meet the person who comes to your venue enough that they're like, oh man, last week you played that same song after this song and I'm just really bored. I really, really doubt it will ever happen. I think the impact on their experience is actually a lot better when there's a seamless, beautiful mix between two great tracks that work really, really well. If you get bored, make new sequences or change up the sequences or go in reverse. I do that a lot where actually this happens a lot where I know I want to go into a vignette, but the number 1 isn't the right song to play. So I'll play number 5. And then I might play a different one inside the vignette, but at least it gives me a grouping of music that's kind of, similar. And that's really what this tool is it's a grouping technique that allows us to, mix stuff together.
Do you keep your sequences refreshed every once in a while, or you just make a sequence and you say, okay, that's a perfect sequence, I'm going to make another one if I want to?
That's a great question. A lot of times I'll go back and I'll listen to my sets and I will revise them. Like, number 4 didn't quite work. Or so I have a few that I've played enough times where it's just like that sequence crushes almost every time. I'm not going to change it. And there'll be a point in a year where I don't play it anymore. But I play out and I'm like, this doesn't really work. So I go back and I kind of redesign it. Or I use things from other sequences and combine them. But I use this almost exclusively. I was in the store and I heard does anybody know the band from the 90s called the Cranberries? I heard it in the store and I was like, oh man, I got to play the Cranberries. This would go down so well. But it's a rock song and rock drummers are all over the place. So I made a sequence of these 3 songs. And I'm, of course, my hashtag is berries. So I'm going to search that. And there it is. There's my berries sequence. I wish you guys could see this more clearly. But the first song in the track is like this hip hop thing. And I played this out and I was able to mix the Cranberries freestyle because I used to play with a lot of turntables and I can do that. Yeah, no, the S8 sucks for that. You want turntables. But it was you're riding the beat, you're riding this drummer. So I did an edit to make it cleaner. Do you guys want to hear the mix? Yeah. Again, I've got the mix out point, I've got the flag, and I've got a loop ready to go. So I don't have to worry about looping. I don't have to worry about, I know where to start this mix. Of course, the hard thing about playing songs like this is you need to know how to get out of them. I'm about to play a 90s rock track. Like, that could be a disaster if I'm not prepared. So the big thing is not mixing in, but how the hell do I get out of this mess? I picked a part of this song that had no music, that just had a beat, so I could keep the beat going. And there I used a little echo freeze to help me get rid of the beat. And I gotta tell you, the first time I did this mix, the crowd completely lost their shit. It was so good. But the hard part is, how the hell do I get out of the Cranberries if I want to mix and not just start another song? So you guys see what's coming up, right? What's on the right of the song? There's a red flag and there's a loop. You get the idea. So let's skip ahead and see what happens. Let's redo that because I didn't start it at the right place. And again, what I did is I set a loop on a cool part of the bass line that works. And now I'll start to kind of mess with the loop. But that loop really helps this whole section work, right? If it's not there, it's kind of missing. And that's how I got out of that song. All right. Thank you. And that mix goes over really well. That's a vignette that I haven't changed because it works. But I rarely play it because it takes a very special crowd to tolerate the Cranberries. I'd like to open it up in the last 10 minutes for questions, comments, or anything you're super excited about. Or even just what you found valuable in this session would be much appreciated. So it's up to you guys. Who's got some questions?
Hey, Ian.
Hey.
I'm curious about, so because of quantize and all that and Ableton sets, live sets usually sound, if you don't look at the stage, they sound just like recorded music. So you don't really sense the live. And promoters kind of like sell the live act as if it's better than the DJ set, but the crowd doesn't actually sense any difference. So I'm curious, like, how do you draw focus to the fact that it's a live set? Like, what kind of tricks you can do to make the audience feel that it's not just quantized, like 7 loops being played together, which is very impressive, but you don't sense it because it sounds just like what you do in the studio anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm doing all these amazing mixes that are seamless, but I could have done an edit. The crowd's like, I don't know, it sounded perfect. I don't know that he was doing anything. It's a good question. How do you sort of bring attention to your mixing? I would turn it back around and ask the question, is it necessary to bring attention to the mixing? Is it necessary for the crowd to know that you're doing something? Again, the question is, who are you serving? Whose agenda is it? Is it to say, hey, look at me, I'm doing cool things? Or to have a seamless night? I'm mixing up things. You were talking about Ableton sets in which everything's quantized and you might as well have done it in the studio, and sort of using my own story of DJing where it's maybe a similar result. I think the simple answer is to make mistakes, to do things that are risky. People love seeing other people's humanity, and they'll forgive you. So doing things a little imperfectly and being willing to make mistakes is one great way for people to know, like, oh, wow, he's actually really trying, and he or she is really trying and is doing things, because that was kind of off, but then they pulled it off and made it work, and cool. Yes, then everyone's on your side. I hope that answers your question.
I have a question about your vision to the future controller. Let's say you've got, all the resources you need. Do you think that something you will change conceptually about the controller, let's say in 10 or 20 years from today? Any feature, I don't know, that you would add? Or
Yeah, if I did, what would my dream controller be?
Yes, your dream controller. And everything is possible, let's say, in an ideal world.
Well, right now I'm really into the drums. I'm learning how to play drums. They're the most fun instrument in the world. So I would love a controller, and I may just start creating this on the side where I can be playing drums. So I'd like big pads or that I could maybe hit with my fingers. I mean, the MIDI fighter is already that, right? We've made these controllers that are really musical and playable, but it'd be great to be able to play like some drumsticks and have controllers that imagined that the DJs were also musicians. In controllerism and in all my videos, I took controllers that were not meant to be played musically and I made them musical instruments. But it'd be nice if they were actually designed to be musical instruments while you were DJing. That'd be pretty cool.
I want to ask you if I look at Pioneer, and I look at the newest controllers, like the 1000, Is there gonna be like great like news of tractor controllers if you know something about it? Because one of the reason I'm going to buy to use record box, I'm actually consider it because the controllers they made for record box, but not because of the software. So I can like go to tractor if there will be like decent controller. I'm not talking about like platters like the NS7, you know, like real vinyls.
I'm sorry to say I don't have any news for you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
I apologize. And I'm not holding back. I really don't know. I designed or helped. I was the main designer on the S4 and the S2, and was very involved in Native Instruments back in when those things were created. But I haven't been as involved over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
That's the reason they are stuck in the same place. Maybe. Okay, thank you.
Great. We have a comment, and you had a question too, so we can bring back.
Regarding the Pioneer equipment, I know that Tractor came out with a public beta version that's supposed to support Pioneer equipment out of the box without having to map your MIDI or whatever. So that's available.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that your system, your hashtag system and the vignettes, it's a great system. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And another thing I wanted to ask regarding mixing between 2 tracks that has vocals inside. Do you think it's better to use always harmonic mixing when doing that? Coming out of a chorus into the first verse of the next track? I think it's always better to use harmonic mixing, like the same tracks are on the same key and not just any track that you think sounds good.
Yeah. So the harmonic mixing is when you mix 2 songs that are definitely in the same key, so they will musically gel theoretically. And should we always be mixing in key, especially if there's words? I have sort of a different. I used to mix a lot in key, and I don't as much anymore. I feel like the best song is the right song to play, and it's not always the same key. So that's why I do vignettes, is I try to look for songs that are in complementary keys that are the right song, and I have to go through a lot of music to find it. But if I'm just freestyling, which I do most of the time, I'm not thinking about key, I'm thinking about what's the right track.
But then do you always wait for only the beat to come at the end of the song, or just you wait for the end of the chorus and then whatever melody is in the background, you perform the mix?
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks that I use to make those work. The simplest one, so I mix where I need to mix, and then I make adjustments to try to compensate. If I know it's a really, really awkward key, then I'll wait for a breakdown, or I'll do an echo fade, or I'll do a trick like what I did earlier in the mix, where I grab a little loop that's I'll grab a loop of a note that's in the key of the new song. Like you
showed us.
Yeah. That's a great one. What about from this area right here? We haven't heard too much from that side. I'm going to challenge somebody in that crew to ask a question.
So what's your gear? Your personal gear? What gear do you use daily?
To DJ with?
Yeah.
I actually, for this style of music, if I'm playing mixed genres, I love this setup, an S5 and an F1. When I was touring, playing a lot of techno, I would use a mixer, an X1, and a MIDI fighter, and a drum machine, like a real physical mixer, because it's more about blending and shaping, and this is much more like almost like battle mixing, you know, back when I would play with 2 turntables and you're mixing back and forth, you have to move fast. I think this setup feels very battle friendly. Yeah.
how long are your vignettes?
Oh, that's a good question. How long are my vignettes?
Because you said pre-planning, right? 2 long sets.
That's a great question. I used to plan big, long vignettes, like 6, 7 songs, and that's too long. Then I'm planning the set and not responding to the audience. Now I do like 3 songs. Yeah, like 3, 4 songs max. And usually it's based around, like in this case, with berries, it's all about getting into and getting out of cranberries. 3 or 4 songs. I think that's a good number. More than that, and you stop paying attention to the audience, and you're just in this thing that you planned, and you're no longer DJing. You're welcome.
I don't know if you use that in your set, but when you're trying to transition between like 2 tracks with different BPM, I don't know, let's say 125 to 100. Do you have any techniques beside like slow tempo changing that I saw you doing in the beginning?
Nice catch. Yeah, I did a big tempo change in the beginning when I went up to Bodachia. Yeah, I have a whole bunch. Normally when I do this workshop, it's 4 hours, and that's one of the topics we cover. I will be putting out a long video or like a class that's like 4 or 5 hours long that contains the material we talked about today in greater detail and a lot of things like you're asking. How to mix between different tempos, how to move tempos, because there's 5 or 6 different ways to do it, depending on how complex you want to get. So I'm sorry, we can't go into that today, but I will deliver that material soon.
Do you get people that ask you to play certain song, like special request, and how do you react? Or because you cannot please everybody, like everybody has his own taste. But if it's not like a techno evening, if it's like an open evening, and do people ask you and come and ask you for requests, and how do you react?
Yeah, there were definitely times in my career where that happened when I was playing smaller bars or clubs, and people felt like it was normal to come up and say, "Hey, I want this song." And I actually think that while it's kind of annoying, right, as DJs, someone comes up and is like, "Hey, can you play this song?" Maybe it's a really bad song or a really cheesy song. It's incredibly valuable information. They're saying, "Hey, this is what I and maybe some people like them want to hear." So usually I do listen, and it's like, okay, interesting. Occasionally it's a great idea, something totally random. And I think, oh, wow, that's a really good idea. I will totally do that. But if the one thing I would say I've learned the hard way, if it's a really bad idea and it's not going to work, don't tell them, "Oh yeah, I'll play that later," because they'll come back 5 times and, "Hey, why didn't you play it? Why didn't you play it?" And then they'll get more and more angry. Just tell them, "No, I'm sorry. Like that's not the vibe I'm going for tonight, or I don't have it, or that wouldn't work in my set. But thank you for taking the time to share what you want, because I think it's valuable, right?" Again, I don't know, maybe you guys have a different opinion, but I think we're so blessed to be able to be paid to play music for people. We're not there for our egos, we're there for the people who want to dance. We're there to serve. So if someone comes up and makes a request, I think it's a valuable request. We don't have to play it, but it's good information. And I want to thank you guys for your requests tonight and the material that you wanted to hear. I hope that I delivered some value for you. And I want to thank you very much for coming out and supporting. And thank you to BPM for hosting this and putting a lot of work in and making this happen. So give a big round of applause for BPM.
Thank you.